نعم بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع هدى أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to start our lessons with as-sarfu, and we are going to follow the arrangement of matnu al-bina. Sarfu is a very important knowledge that you should have if you want to understand Arabic language, because the scholars of Islam, when they want to advise you to study Arabic language, they usually advise you to study an-nahwu, which is Arabic grammar, and as-sarfu, which is morphology, whereby you try to know the origin of words and how they form. So you are advised to learn an-nahwu and as-sarfu. But for this particular series, we are going to learn just sarfu, inshallah ta'ala, because sarfu is very important. It is through sarfu that you understand how the kalimat, how the words of Arabic, how they work. Because if you don't understand sarf, some scholars would say that you don't understand Arabic language in reality, no matter how good you are in nahwu, in Arabic grammar. If you don't understand sarf, khalas, you don't understand Arabic language yet. That is why you are advised to study as-sarfu. Now we are going to start with the definition of as-sarfu, ta'rif as-sarf, the definition of sarf. So we are going to define it in two ways. We are going to define it lughatan wa istilahan. Lughatan wa istilahan. Lughatan, that is linguistically, in Arabic language, what does sarf mean? Then we are going to define it istilahan, that is according to the scholars of sarfu, how do they define sarf? So lughatan, as-sarfu huwa at-tahwil. So according to Arabic language, as-sarfu means at-tahwil, when you change the position of something to another position, when you displace something. That is what we call as-sarfu, that is at-tahwil. So if you move something from here to there, you've done as-sarfu. While istilahan, according to the scholars of sarf, when they want to define sarf, they say ilmun بأصول يعرف بها أحوال أبنية الكلم التي ليست إعرابا. I take that again. علم بأصول يعرف بها أحوال أبنية الكلم التي ليست إعرابا. This definition in reality is the definition of Ibn al-Hajib. Ibn al-Hajib. Ibn al-Hajib is one of the scholars of sarf, and he said that sarfu istilahan, according to the scholars of sarfu, it means ilmun bi usulin yu'rafu biha ahwalu abniyatil kalimi allati laysat i'raba. He said that what sarfu means is ilmun bi usulin. It is when you know some principles. When you know some principles, yu'rafu biha, and you use these principles to know ahwalu abniyatil kalimi, the way kalimats, yani Arabic letters, Arabic words, the way they are formed and the way they change. Ahwalu abniyatil kalimi, the way they are formed and the way they change. So if you know some principles that we are going to learn in sarf, inshallah ta'ala, you use these principles to know how the words are changing and how they are formed. But if you want to know how they are changing, you are not concerned with i'rab. That's why they said allati laysat i'raba. The changing you are concerned with is not i'rab. The changing you are concerned with is not i'rab, because i'rab is learned when you are learning nahwu, Arabic grammar. I'rab is learned when you are learning Arabic grammar, nahwu. Okay, what is i'rab according to the scholars of nahwu? It is when a kalima goes from raf'u to nasbu, or from raf'u to jarru, or from raf'u to jazmu if it is a verb, a fi'l. But we are not concerned with all of that in this particular series. Our concern here is sarfu. So meaning that sarfu does not deal with the ending part of a kalima. Sarfu does not deal with the ending part of a kalima. So it has its business is with the beginning of the kalima and the center of the kalima. As for the ending part, it does not have any business with that. So that ending part is the job of nahwu. And that is why he said allati laysat i'raba. So the changing that sarf is concerned with is not i'rab, not the ending part of a kalima. So that is the definition of sarfu according to the scholars of sarf. So from here you can understand that according to the scholars of sarfu is when you understand some methodologies, understand some principles that you can use to identify the origin of a kalima, or to identify how a kalima is changing, and to identify the meaning of a particular kalima when it changes. So this is all you are doing in sarf. Now we mentioned that sarf is concerned with ahwal abniyat al-kalimi, the way kalimat are changing, which means that sarf is concerned with the kalimat of Arabiya, that is the Arabic words. Sarf is concerned with the Arabic words, meaning that you can't apply the rulings or the principles of sarf in another language. So the principles of sarf should be applied only on Arabic words. Now these Arabic words al-kalimat al-Arabiyya tanqasimu ila thalathati aqsam. Arabic words are divided into three broad parts. Al-kalima divided into three broad parts. The first one is al-ismu. The second one is al-fi'lu. The third one is al-harfu. So al-kalima is of three types. Al-ismu, we can roughly call that noun, even though it is not completely noun, but let's roughly call that a noun. Okay. Then al-kalima could also be al-fi'lu. Al-fi'lu is verb. And al-kalima is also could also be harf. Al-harf, which is a letter. Okay. So but sarfu is concerned with only ismu and fi'lu. Sarf does not have any business with harfun. Sarf does not have any business with harfun. That is why if you open any book of sarf today, you will never see them discussing harf there. What you see them discussing there is ismu and fi'lu. Ismun and fi'lu. Meaning that even though sarf is concerned with Arabic words, you have to take out harf from there. As for ismu and fi'lu, then sarfu is concerned with that. But you should also note that ismu is divided into two broad parts as well as fi'lu. Fi'lu is also divided into two broad parts. So we have what we call al-asma'u, the plural of ismu, al-asma'u al-mutamakkinatu, and we have al-asma'u ghayrul mutamakkinati, or you call it al-asma'u al-jamida. Al-asma'u al-mutamakkinatu wal-asma'u ghayrul mutamakkinati. Now what is al-asma'u al-mutamakkinatu and what is al-asma'u ghayrul mutamakkinati? Al-asma'u al-mutamakkinatu, these are the names, the nouns that can move from raf'u to nasbu, or from raf'u to jarru. That is, it can move from dhamma to fatha, or it can move from dhamma to kasra. So these are what we call al-asma al-mutamakkina. For example, Muhammad, Muhammadun, Muhammadun. I can say Ja'a Muhammadun, Muhammad arrived. I can also say Ra'aytu Muhammadan, I saw Muhammad. And I can also say marartu bi Muhammadin, I passed by Muhammad. You can see that Muhammad was taking Dhamma at some point. At some point it is taking Fatha. At some point it is taking Kasra. So it has changed from Dhamma, which is Raf'u, to Fatha, which is Nasbu. Or it changed from Dhamma, which is Raf'u, to Kasra, which is Jarru. So a particular name that can change in this form is what we call, it is from Al-Asma Al-Mutamakkina. Another example of Al-Asma Al-Mutamakkina is Baytun. Baytun can take Fatha and it becomes Baytan. Baytun can take Kasra and it becomes Baytin. For instance, I can say Hadha Baytun. I can say Ra'aytu Baytan, and I can say Marartu bi Baytin. So this is a house. I saw a house and I passed by a house. So Baytun is from Al-Asma Al-Mutamakkina. As for Asma, Al-Asma Ghayrul Mutamakkini, Al-Asma Ghayrul Mutamakkini. So these are nouns that don't have Raf'u, they don't have Dhamma that you can see. They don't have Kasra that you can see. They don't have Fatha that you can see at the ending of the kalima. For instance, Hadha. So Hadha remains Hadha in all situations. For instance, I can say Ja'a Hadha, this person came. Ra'aytu Hadha, I saw this person. Wa marartu bi Hadha. It does not go from Dhamma to Fatha. It does not go from Dhamma to Kasra as well. So this is from Al-Asma Ghayrul Mutamakkina. Another example of Al-Asma Ghayrul Mutamakkina is Alladhi. Alladhi remains Alladhi in all situations. Ja'a Alladhi, Ra'aytu Alladhi, Marartu Billadhi. Ja'a Alladhi Duriba, Ra'aytu Alladhi Duriba, Wa Marartu Billadhi Duriba. So you don't see any changes in Alladhi, in the position of Raf'u, in the position of Nasbu, in the position of Jarru. No changes. So this is what we call Al-Asma Ghayrul Mutamakkina. Now you should note that Sarfu, it does not have any business with Al-Asma Ghayrul Mutamakkina. Rather, it only has business with Al-Asma'u Al-Mutamakkina. So you should note that Sarfu does not have any business with Hadha, or Hadhihi, or Alladhi, or Allati. So Sarf does not have any business with these kinds of names. Because Hadha is also Ismu. If you want to define Hadha, you say Ismu Isharatin. It is a noun that you use to indicate. If you want to define Alladhi, you say Ismu Mawsul. It is Ismun Mawsulun. It is a noun that is used for connection. So it is Ismun, but from Asma Ghayru Mutamakkina. Why Sarfu only has business with Al-Asma Al-Mutamakkina? You should note that. I also mentioned that Al-Fi'lu has two types, just as how Al-Ismu has two types. So we have Al-Af'alu Al-Mutasarrifatu and Al-Af'alu Ghayru Al-Mutasarrifati. Al-Af'alu Al-Mutasarrifatu wal-Af'alu Ghayru Al-Mutasarrifati. So what is Al-Af'al Al-Mutasarrifa? Al-Af'al Al-Mutasarrifa, it is that fi'il, it is those verbs that have mudari' in summary. There are some other things that we can add to that, but in summary, those verbs that have mudari', they are from Al-Asma, Al-Af'al Afwan, Al-Mutasarrifa. So those verbs that can go from past tense Madi, and they go to Mudari', and they go to Amr. So those verbs that can go from Madi, Mudari' to Amr, that is what we call Al-Af'alu Al-Mutasarrifatu. So what do we call Madi? What do we call Mudari'? What do we call Amr? So Madi is past tense. Mudari' is, for our level, let's just say present tense. And Amru is imperative, command. So a verb that can go from past tense to present tense to imperative, order, command, such a verb is called fi'lun mutasarrif. It is from al-af'al al-mutasarrifa. For instance, daraba yadribu, idrib. Daraba is he beats. Yadribu means he will beat. Idrib means beat. So daraba yadribu idrib. It means that daraba is from al-af'al al-mutasarrifa. Why? Because it can go from madi to mudari' to amr. The second one is, I said al-af'al ghayr mutasarrifa. Af'al ghayr mutasarrifa. So these are the verbs that cannot go from madi to mudari', yani from past tense to mudari'. Or some of these verbs are in the form of mudari' and they can't leave that form. Or some of these verbs, they're in the form of amri alone. They can't leave that, they can't leave that particular position. Unlike mutasarrifa that can go from madi to mudari' to amr. But ghayr mutasarrifa, some would remain in madi, some would remain in mudari', some would remain in amr. Example of al-af'al ghayr mutasarrifa, like laysa. Laysa is a verb according to the scholars of Sarf and Nahu. In fact, Arabic language, laysa is a verb. Although some say it's not a verb, but the correct thing is laysa is a verb. Ni'ma is also a verb. Ni'ma. Bi'sa is also a verb. Laysa, ni'ma, bi'sa, they are all verbs, but they don't have mudari'. They don't leave madi alone. They remain in madi. So these are al-af'al ghayr mutasarrifa. You should also note that Sarfu does not have any business with al-af'al ghayr mutasarrifa. It only has business with al-af'al al-mutasarrifa, which means that Sarfu has business with ismu and fi'lu. But which kind of ismu and fi'lu? Al-asma'u al-mutamakkinatu wal-af'alu al-mutasarrifatu. So we need to understand that. We need to understand that firstly. Now, we go down to al-fi'lu. Since we said that Sarfu is concerned with al-af'al and al-asma. So let's pick up fi'lu first. Then we go down to ismu, inshallah ta'ala, as time goes on. Now, so al-fi'lu is of two types. Al-fi'lu is of two types if you want to consider the number of huruf, the number of letters in that verb. Verb is of two types. Al-fi'lu is of two types if you are considering the number of verbs, the number of huruf, the number of letters in the verb. So if you are considering the number of letters in a verb, I said al-fi'lu is divided into two types. The first one is al-mujarrad. The first one is al-mujarradu. The second one is al-mazidu fihi. Al-mujarradu and al-mazidu fihi. So if you want to divide fi'lu in consideration of the number of huruf, the number of letters in the verb, then you say that verb is of two types, al-mujarradu and al-mazidu fihi. So for this particular lesson, inshallah, I am going to explain what al-mujarradu is. As time goes on, we go down to al-mazidu fihi. What is al-mujarrad? Al-mujarrad, if I say al-fi'lu al-mujarrad, it is that verb whereby if you should take out one letter from its letters, if you should take out one letter from its letters, the original meaning of that verb is lost. I take that again. Al-fi'lu al-mujarrad is that verb whereby if you should take out one letter from its letters, the origin or the origin of that verb, the meaning of that verb originally is lost. For example, doroba. Doroba means to beat. Doroba is a verb that means to beat. So if I should take off dod from there, it remains ra and ba. Does ra and ba, does it have, do they have the original meaning? No. Okay, if I should leave off dod and I take off ra, it remains do and ba. The meaning is lost. If I should take off ba and I leave off dod and ra, the meaning is still lost. The meaning is still lost. Either in that case, daraba is al-fi'lu al-mujarrad, because there is no single letter. There is no single letter in daraba whereby if you should take it out, it still remains. The original meaning is still there. We don't have such, because if I take out dot, it spoils. If I take out ra, it spoils. If I take out ba, it spoils. So daraba is from al-fi'l al-mujarrad. Another example of al-fi'lu al-mujarrad is kataba. Kataba means to write. Kataba means to write. If I take out kaf from kataba, it remains ta and ba. Ta and ba obviously does not preserve the original meaning. Ta and ba does not preserve the original meaning. So meaning that kaf is shouldn't be removed from that verb if you still want to preserve the meaning of that verb. Okay, if I should take out ta, it remains ka and ba. Is the meaning preserved? No. If I take out ba, what happens? The same thing applies. The meaning is not preserved, meaning that all the letters in kataba, they should be there. Meaning that kataba is al-fi'lu al-mujarrad. Another example is zalzala. Zalzala means to shake. Zalzala means to shake something. Okay, so if I should take off the first zai rather, I have lam, zai, and lam. The meaning is obviously lost. If I take off the second or the first lam, it's still lost. If I take off the second zai, it's still lost, as well as the last lam, it's lost. Meaning that zalzala is al-fi'lu al-mujarrad. So in a nutshell, al-fi'lu al-mujarrad is that verb whereby if you should take out one letter from its letters, the original meaning is lost, it is not preserved. That is what we mean by al-fi'lu al-mujarrad. As for al-fi'lu al-mazidu fi, inshallah ta'ala, as we proceed, I will define it inshallah ta'ala for us. But for now, we are concerned with al-fi'lu al-mujarrad. We now see this fi'lu al-mujarrad, it is also divided into two parts as well. Al-fi'lu al-mujarrad, it is also divided into two parts as well. We have al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi. Al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi. And we have al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-ruba'i. Al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-ruba'i. What is al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi? We know what mujarrad is, but what is thulathi? Thulathi means the verb in its past tense form is 3 in number. That is, the number of huruf. The number of huruf in that verb in the past tense is 3. The number of huruf, the number of letters in past tense of that verb is 3. That's what we call a thulathi. Then what is ar-ruba'i? Ar-ruba'i means that the verb in its past tense form, the letters in that verb they are 4 in number. For thulathi they are 3 in number. For ruba'i they are 4 in number. That's the meaning. So when I say al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi, I'm saying that verb that is mujarrad and has 3 letters in its past tense form. When I say al-ruba'i, it means that verb that has 4 letters in its past tense form. Now, al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi can come in 3 forms. Al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi can come in 3 forms. It can come in the form of fa'ala. Fa'ala. It can come in the form of fa'ila with kasra. Fa'ila. It can come in the form of fa'ula. Fa'ula. The first one is fa'ala. The second one is fa'ila. The third one is fa'ula. Example of verbs that are in the form of fa'ala, like doroba, like fataha, like kataba. Example of verbs in the form of fa'ila, like alima, like halima, like hasiba. Example of verbs in the form of fa'ula, like sharufa, like kathura, and kabura. So these are the three forms that al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-thulathi can come. As for al-fi'lu al-mujarrad al-ruba'i, it can come in only one form, which is fa'lala. Fa'lala. So you don't have fa'alila, la. You don't have fa'alula. You only have fa'lala. That's the only form it comes. Example of verbs in the form of fa'lala, like saying zalzala, like saying waswasa, like saying dahraja. So these are the verbs that come in the form of fa'alala. So inshallah ta'ala, we are going to stop this lesson here, and in the next lesson we are going to continue from where we stop. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.